Hi everybody, welcome to In the Mix. This is part 1 of a detailed 2-part series walkthrough/video manual for Syntronik version 1. There's also going to be a part 3 video which will demo the sounds and instruments of this exciting library. Down below in the description area, you'll find a timeline that contains all the different chapters that are covered in this video. So let's get started. Syntronik is a high-quality hybrid virtual synth instrument developed by IK Multimedia. Using drift technology, oscillators of 17 rare vintage instruments are accurately sampled and combined with a powerful filter and effects section. Unlike most sample-based libraries, this instrument maintains the vibe and usage of the real hardware. This plugin includes an amazing collection of 38 extremely hard-to-find vintage instruments from notable synth manufacturers such as Moog, Sequential Circuits, ARP, Roland, Yamaha, and Oberheim, and are neatly organized and represented under 17 instrument categories. It's over a 50 GB sample library with more than 2,000 presets and 38 high-quality effects. If you want to demo the product, you can download Syntronik free, which is basically a free version of the full program, which gives you access to 50 sounds and full functionality of all controls and effects. Syntronik is a 64-bit plugin and standalone application available for both Mac and PC, and it requires a 64-bit CPU and operating system. The minimum requirement for RAM is 4 GB, but 8 GB or more is recommended. The supported plugin formats are VST2, VST3, AAX, or AU-capable host software. You would also need 60 GB of hard drive space. You can install Syntronik on up to 3 different computers, provided that you have the exclusive control of these machines and you're not going to use the program on more than one computer simultaneously. And for anyone out there who owns Sample Tank 3, you can also import Syntronik sounds as well. Syntronik can be used as a standalone application and as a plugin. For the time being, I'll open it as a plugin in Pro Tools, but later on in this video, I'll go over the standalone mode as well. Let's talk about Syntronik's user interface. There are 5 main windows or view modes available. All 5 windows are selectable and we can switch between them by clicking on their corresponding icon at the top. Some of these view modes only become available if there's a patch loaded. So I'll go ahead and load the first patch here. The instrument browser is the default view mode when we launch Syntronik, so it's already selected. These icons at the top are descriptive and represent the corresponding window pretty well. Here's the layer panel. If I click on the icon again, it'll take me to the Synth Panel. This is the Effect Panel. And this one that looks like a step sequencer brings up the arpeggio panel. Clicking on any of these icons a second time will select the synth panel. This little icon here that looks like a keyboard will bring up the instrument browser window. The instrument browser is the default selected window when we launch Syntronik. Here on the left, we have the synth column that features all of the available instruments. I have the full version installed, so all 17 instruments are available. The third column from the left contains all the sounds that are inspired and associated with the instruments in the synth column. Since I don't have an instrument selected in the synth column right now, all 2,000 plus presets for all 17 instruments are shown here. If I wanted to narrow down the preset selection, I could simply click and highlight one or more instruments in the synth column, and that will generate a smaller preset list relevant to the selected instruments only. I'm gonna go ahead and select 99, which is the first instrument in the synth column. So now the search result only includes the presets that are based on this specific instrument. If I add more instruments to the selection, the search result will include all highlighted instruments accordingly. So in this case, the patch list includes all presets for both 99 and Bully. Then we have the filters column, which includes a large number of keywords that we can use to narrow down the search result. Of course, we can use the synth column combined with the filter column to fine-tune the search results even more. With 99 and Bully selected in the synth column, I'll choose the keyword ethnic. Now the patch list is populated with ethnic presets that are based on these two instruments only. We can use more than one keyword to filter out the selection. So now I was able to narrow down my search to one preset that fits the criteria of ethnic and aggressive within 99 and Bully presets. To deselect an item in the synth and filter column, we can simply click on the highlighted instrument and keyword, and that deselects only those items. If you wanted to deselect all highlighted items, click on the X here at the top and that will deselect and clear all instruments and filter keywords in one go. Now, let's talk about the last two columns. If we click once on a preset, we can see its description in the very last column on the right. We can also use the mouse and up-down arrow keys on the computer keyboard to change the selection. Here, we can tag our go-to instruments as favorite. I'll go ahead and add a few instruments to my favorite list. If I ever want to view my favorite sounds, I can just click on the star icon up here in the filter column and display my favorite sounds this way. To remove a sound from the favorite list, just click on the highlighted star icon to deselect it. To load an instrument, just double-click on the preset. A broad pad just got loaded into Bank A. Syntronik is a 4-part synth, and we can select banks A, B, C, or D to load up to 4 sounds, similar to what you see on hardware synthesizers as multi or combination patches. When a preset is loaded, we can see its name up here, and also an X appears above the description column. Now to clear an instrument, click on toaster icon to the right of the instrument name and select empty. If you click on the X to the left of the preset, that will completely remove the sound from the hard disk, so use caution. Clicking on more sounds will take us to the IK website and you can see if there are any new additional synths available for purchase. This panel is only available if there's a preset loaded in any of these 4 parts, so let's go ahead and load an instrument in part A. If you're in the instrument browser window, just click on the X and that'll open the synth panel. If you're in the synth layer, effect, or arpeggiator panel, just click on their icon one more time and that will also change the view to the synth panel as well. In the synth panel, we have standard synthesizer editing controls for oscillators, filters, LFO, envelopes, and controllers that you would normally see on hardware synths. The synth panel for each instrument is designed to look like the original hardware synth that inspired it. Here I've loaded 4 presets from different instruments. As you can see, each has a unique interface, but they all share the same exact editing controls. Let's start from the oscillator section. In general, oscillators are responsible for generating the original basic sound. Then, depending on how complex the signal chain is, it gets fed through the different section of the synth and eventually becomes a patch or preset. Oscillator section in Syntronik uses sampled oscillators to recreate the behavior of analog and digital instruments. The original sound of the oscillators cannot be edited within each instrument, but that may not be necessary, because for the most part, multiple samples are taken at different velocities and capture the natural variation and character of each instrument pretty well. The rest of the controls in this section are pretty straightforward. Here we have Tune, which controls the master tuning of the instrument. Os2 switch turns oscillator 2 on and off, and Os2 detune controls the tuning for oscillator 2 by ± 50 cents. The filter section processes and filters the basic sound, and by doing so, changes the tone and characteristics of the original sound generated by oscillators. Here at the top, we have 7 filter types, of which M, R, C, and O type are analog modeled filters. There is also the classic IK legacy filter from Sample Tank, a formant and a phaser filter available. Altogether, we have 4 common filter modes and slopes available. Low pass removes high frequencies above the cutoff frequency. High pass does the opposite. Band pass filter removes everything above and below a range around the cutoff frequency. And notch does the opposite of band pass. Filter slope sets the steepness or response curve of the selected filter. Each filter type can have a different number of attenuation slope at the specified cutoff frequency. We can choose between 6, 12, 18, and 24 dB per octave. Higher numbers increase the steepness of each slope per octave, which makes the results more effective. Just be aware that not all of these filter modes and filter slopes are available for all filter types. For example, for C and R type filters, there's only a low pass mode available, but for M type, all 4 filter modes could be selected. The O type filter features a 12 dB per octave slope, whereas the M type features a 24 dB per octave slope. Of course, we also have the cutoff frequency and resonance, which are the 2 main controls. Cutoff determines where the signal is cut off. In other words, it adjusts the frequency from where the filter starts working. The resonance boosts the signal around the cutoff frequency, which results in changing the waveform and timbre. Filter drive is a pre-filter overdrive control, so it controls the amount of gain to the waveform as it enters the filter section. Overdriving the filter distorts the waveform and creates a new timbre. We also have a velocity control that we can use to add a certain amount of modulation to the cutoff frequency. The LFO section is a very important modulation tool. This is only a control source oscillator, so we won't be able to hear the actual oscillator itself, but we can select one of these 5 waveforms and use it for pan, pitch, and filter modulation. Depending on the selected waveform, the LFO adds liveliness and variation to the sound at an adjustable rate. Rate controls the modulation speed. If you want Syntronik's LFO to sync with your DAW's BPM, then you would want to enable the BPM sync. With BPM sync engaged, the LFO rate will slave to the tempo of your host application. Next, we have 3 independent controls for modulating pan, pitch, and filter. Depending on the selected waveform, the added effect to these parameters could be smooth or aggressive. Next is the controllers section. First, we have bend, which sets the range for the pitch bend wheel. The range is 0 to 24 semitones and applies for both up and down bends. Vibrate controls the speed of vibrato that is assigned to the mod wheel by default. If we want the mod wheel to control other parameters, we set the vibrate to 0. Here we can set the keyboard mode, which determines how Syntronik will respond to incoming notes. Syntronik is a polyphonic instrument, but it can also be set to perform as a mono instrument. There are 4 different modes available. In poly mode, all incoming notes play polyphonically. If set to mono, it will only play 1 note at a time. In this mode, if there are overlapping notes, the last note has priority and the previous note will stop. Mono mode re-triggers the envelopes for each new note regardless of how you play the notes. Legato 1 and 2 are also monophonic modes, but they don't trigger the envelopes when the notes play connected. They will re-trigger the envelopes only if there's a space between the notes. The difference between Legato 1 and 2 is how they handle portamento. If the keyboard mode is set to Legato 1 or 2, then we can use the portamento or glide controller to set the amount of continuous pitch change between notes if they're played connected. Then we have the loudness and filter envelope sections, which have the usual ADSR parameters. The loudness envelope is responsible for controlling the level of the signal over time. The filter envelope controls the rise and fall of the filter cutoff frequency and can be used as a modulation source. At any point, if we wanted to save our edits, we can click on this icon right here that has 3 stacked lines, which will open the Instrument Management menu. Here we have 3 options. Empty will clear and unload the instrument. Save will save the edits and overwrite the factory settings for the currently selected instrument. Save as will save the edits as a new instrument. When we're saving a patch as a new preset, the Save Instrument dialog box will open. Here we can rename the instrument, set a folder, category, and also assign a metadata tags that become useful when using the filters or text search in the instrument browser window. I'm just going to call it My Instrument and make some random changes here just to show you how it works. This is also where you can add a user keyword of your choice, as well as a description for your user instrument. Now that I saved the instrument, let's empty it and go back to the instrument browser window. Here, under User, you'll be able to find user keywords that you added. If I select the keyword, it will show My Instrument preset. I can also put in the name in the search field and find it that way. With Midi Learn, you can associate and assign many of Syntronik parameters to physical knobs, switches, and faders on a MIDI controller. Once a parameter is assigned and learned, you can dynamically change the parameter using the hardware controller over the course of your performance. Here, I'm using Pro Tools as a host application to run Syntronik, and the VIP software for Akai Advanced MIDI controller. You might be using a different DAW or MIDI controller, but the concept is the same. I'm going to go ahead and map knob 1 to control a Syntronik parameter. Syntronik accepts MIDI CC messages from external controllers, so you want to make sure the physical control that you'd like to use is set to transmit CC messages as well. Once the MIDI controller is configured properly, the process of Midi Learn is pretty easy and straightforward. Let me show you how it works. Right-clicking on most Syntronik parameters opens up a pop-up menu with 2 options, Midi Learn and MIDI Assignments. Obviously, if right-clicking on a knob, switch, or fader doesn't bring this pop-up menu, then we'll know Midi Learn is not available for that particular parameter. I'm going to use the Synth Panel to demonstrate this feature, but keep in mind that Midi Learn is available in other view modes as well. MIDI Assignments window lists all the current MIDI assignments. It's empty right now because I haven't MIDI learned any of the parameters just yet. I'll go ahead and Midi Learn filter in the modulation section. Once Midi Learn is selected, Syntronik displays this message, which basically means it's waiting for me to move a physical control. As soon as I move the knob, this message will disappear and the physical control and the parameter will be instantly paired. So now knob 1 controls filter. If I go to MIDI Assignments window, it should be listed there. We can assign more than one parameter to the same physical control. For example, I can select a different parameter such as pitch, move knob 1, and now knob 1 controls both filter and pitch. Let's go back to MIDI Assignments window. Right now, we're looking at all the MIDI assignments for the selected instruments in Part A only. If we wanted to see MIDI assignments for other parts, we can click the part field and cycle through parts B, C, and D. I'll go ahead and load an instrument to Part B. This is the synth panel for the instrument loaded in Part B. I'll assign tune to knob 1 as well. And now knob 1 controls tune for Part B and filter and pitch for the instrument in Part A. This is the reason why MIDI CC assignments are stored with the layer and not with the instrument, in order to avoid conflicts when multiple instruments are combined in a layer. Here at the bottom of the page, we have an option to set the global master volume for all 4 parts to a CC message and then assign it to a physical control. If you'd like to have a dedicated knob or fader to control the master volume, then you might want to use a CC message that is not assigned to other parameters. I'll go ahead and use CC number 5. Now all I have to do is set a knob or fader on the MIDI controller to CC 5. Knob 2 is available, so I'll go ahead and change the MIDI settings to CC 5. And with this, I can now use knob 2 to control Syntronik's master volume. We can also edit the MIDI assignments for each part. By default, each MIDI assignment is set to 0 to 100%, which is the full range, but we can set them to anything in between. For example, for pitch assignment, I'll change the minimum and maximum value to 25% and 75%. And now when I use knob 1 to control filter and pitch, filter will have the full range, while pitch will be limited to a smaller range. Here we can edit the MIDI CC messages assigned to each parameter. I'll change the MIDI CC message for pitch to CC1, and now knob 1, which is assigned to CC0, can no longer control pitch. Now let's talk about deleting MIDI assignments. To delete an individual MIDI assignment one at a time, we can either right-click on that parameter and choose Reset, or we can click on the X to the left side of the parameter in the MIDI assignment window. To delete all assignments in one go, we can click on Clear All, which will clear all assigned parameters for the selected part. Lastly, if we wanted a MIDI assignment to act like a switch or on-off toggle, we can change the latch mode to on for that specific parameter. And of course, if we switch it back to off, it will go back to the default setting. Okay everyone, this concludes part 1 of this 2-part video. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. See you soon!